Welcome to The One Inside, an internal family systems podcast. I'm your host, Tammy Sollenberger. I'm excited that you and all of your parts have taken time to be with me and all of my parts. If you are a coach, a client, a therapist, if you are in business or education, and you're curious about the IFS model, you are in the right place. Now, let's see what happens on today's podcast. Hey everyone, I am in Denver for the IFS conference. My friend Kathy and I shared an Airbnb. Kathy and I did our level 1 together in Maine a few years ago, and I ended up staying with her and her husband Rodney. And we just had a really fun time together, and we've done the conference a few times together, and it works out great. It's great when you have someone that you just can travel well with and give each other space if you need that, but also dance at the dance party. IFS always has these dance parties the last night, and they're super fun. So anyways, Kathy just left, and so for the first time, I am by myself. I haven't been by myself for, I don't know, 3 or 4 days, so it's kind of funny. But anyways, I had some space by myself, and I thought I'd get on here and check in. Kathy and I got up early this morning and hiked this amazing mountain in Boulder. We went into town, had Mexican food, which we've had 4 times since we've been here. And we walked the shops. It was fun and relaxing, and it felt so good to move after being in 3 days of conferences. And so now it's quiet, and I'm with my own thoughts, which are parts, right? So I'm hearing in the quiet what parts have to say, and kind of just giving them space to hear reactions and feelings to all that happened and I learned and just experiences I had over the weekend. And I had 2 really, not just one intense conversation, but 2 really intense conversation over this weekend. One was much needed repair that I think went really well. One was a really uncomfortable conversation. And I guess what I wanted to say about that is that I have a really powerful part that goes into fight or flight during these conversations, whether it's with my family members or with friends. I'm out of there. And I just feel really, as I'm sitting here in this quiet, I just feel really proud of the part of me that wants to be like, hey, I'm out. Let me stay in these conversations and stay with the tough conversations. Help me be self-led. Help self. That's what it is. It's like that part wasn't there. I was able to be in self and have more self energy during these conversations. So the part that feels so scared of conflict or tension in relationships didn't have to be a part of that. So, yeah. So I was thinking about that, and I was thinking about the power of self. Yeah, I had this thought that in self, I can be brave and I can stay. And I totally get the protective purpose of this part that says, I'm out. I know exactly why that's around and exactly why. And so can just give that part some appreciation. Definitely. And what was so cool about one of the experiences I had is after I had one of these really tough chats, I was standing outside my workshop and they were meditating on the floor, and I kind of looked in and I could see that it wasn't a good time to go in. And so I was just kind of standing outside, kind of reeling from this conversation. And this girl walked by and she's like, we kind of looked at each other. Turns out she follows me and I follow her on Instagram, and she listens to the podcast. And we just had the best chat. And I cannot tell you the importance of the timing, because the hard chat was about the podcast. And so the timing of this conversation it was a godsend. It was unbelievable. And she didn't know any of that, obviously. And she just was so kind and said so many nice things and was so encouraging. And then we we took like a fun photo shoot and which was super silly. So I'm actually going to put the pictures up because she took some great pictures and then she put them into a collage and sent them to me. And I just felt like it was just such a gift after there was a couple really challenging things that happened. So it was just such a gift. So Michelle, hi, and thank you, thank you, thank you from the bottom of my heart. And it was just great. I love when stuff like that happens. Um, Okay, so what's coming up for me most, and why I wanted to jump in here and share, I'm in the middle of editing the next podcast, and so it should be to you in the next week. But I wanted to jump in and share about this power of self and self energy. And if you've been around IFS, you know that you've experienced that, and I have too. But there's two things sort of coming together for me. So one is I've been thinking about how during IFS and during therapy or during my own experiences with IFS, I'm not, I guess I'm going to slow down. Okay, this is what I want to say. IFS is not just about managing parts, mapping parts, asking their concerns, getting to know them and befriend them, and asking them to step back or unblend. It's not just I'm looking for that exile. I'm removing, kind of moving protectors back and looking for the exile, those younger, vulnerable parts of me. I mean, that's a part of it for sure. But I think I just had this like aha moment where I'm like, I could spend all my time personally and professionally doing that, mapping parts, looking for the exile, and I don't know. So this is what's coming up for me that I'm in self. I have an authentic self, and in that experience of being in self, I heal. So even my body, I took the workshop with Dick about pain in our bodies, and just that idea of if I'm in self energy, or the more self energy I have, the more healing happens to my parts, to my mind, to my body. And the reason we're getting to know parts and all the strategies that we have to be with parts and help them is really to experience more self energy, to have more access to self, to be more self led. I know there's some opinions about the right way to say that, and there's a part of me that actually doesn't care at all about the right way to say that, to be completely honest. You know what I mean? And however you want to say that is fine. But yeah, isn't it funny how sometimes there's like specific things that people get like all hung up about? And I'm sure there's plenty that I do, but that is not one of them. So, anyways, I was thinking about that the idea is to experience more self and to embody more self. So, okay, so before the trip, I was thinking about parts of me that were really anxious about logistics, about flying, and I had to take a bus from my town to Boston, and I was like, for some reason, I was so anxious. A part of me was so anxious about that, about getting on the bus and logistics. Then once I get to Denver, taking an Uber, and I just was pretty up about that. And I was laying in bed one night, and I thought, if I could be in self, then I'll be fine. And it was almost like this duh moment of like, okay, so if that anxious part can can connect with self a little bit, hey, we're going to be okay because self knows. Like I don't know right now, I have no idea how that's going to look, but self will know and self will know the right thing to do or how to do it or how all that works or we'll have some clarity, which I don't have at, 2 o'clock in the morning. Anyways, it felt like one of those like duh moments where I'm like, oh, right, self knows, self will be able to figure it out. So it's like self knows what needs to happen. I have more clarity when I'm in self. Self is that experience of all those C words: calm, creative, connection, compassion. And then we've got the P words of patience, persistence, power, playfulness. One thing that Kathy and I did which was so fun, as we rented bikes. This is one of those cities where you can rent these bikes. So you rent them for the day, but you have to like dock them every 30 minutes, which was kind of a pain. But I have great managers that would pay attention to that. But it was so fun. It was so playful, and I felt like it was great. For parts of me that was learning, and parts of me that were super social, and then parts of me could be playful with the bike riding. Okay, so the other thing that and I hope these connections are being made for you because this is how. So I was thinking about self, and I was thinking about this idea of the power of self and how IFS is really about having and holding and accessing more self energy. And then this idea of we have an authentic self. And then, so I had that kind of, going on in my head. And then the other thing that was happening was Dick, if you've been around him, I've heard him say a couple of times that he doesn't have a good elevator speech when someone says, what's IFS? And you kind of have, about 10 seconds to explain what that is before the person's like eyes glaze over. And so Dick has said he doesn't have a good elevator speech, which I think that's not true. I've heard him give an elevator speech a couple times, and I think he probably has the best elevator speech there is. But okay, so then when you're in Uber, if you take an Uber or a taxi or whatever, they always are like super friendly, or my experience, they've been really friendly. And they always say, where are you from and why are you in town? And so Kathy would always took the lead here because I think I was probably pretty out of it. And so, or maybe not as friendly, actually, I'm not sure. But so Kathy would be kind enough to give her IFS elevator speech to these Uber drivers. And so I was thinking about this idea of what is my elevator speech? Because I kept hearing Kathy do it. I was thinking about how when I give my IFS elevator speech, because people will ask me, they'll either ask me about what type of therapy I practice. So I'll say, what do you do for a living? Oh, I have a private practice. What kind of therapy do you practice? Or they'll ask me about the podcast. So I will stumble through my IFS elevator speech and it's not good. I don't think I do not have a good elevator speech. And I can see that they're like looking at me, trying to be kind. Anyway, so I was thinking about self and I was thinking about my elevator speech. And in my elevator speech, it is all about parts. That's what I say when I give my elevator speech. I start with the idea that we're all multiple, right? I say, oh, well, I practice this type of therapy that is about parts. And then I start giving examples. And my favorite example, which you've probably heard me say, is a part of me likes to eat kale, or part of me tells me to eat kale, and another part of me tells me, to eat brownies. That's my kind of favorite polarization of part of me that wants to eat kale, part of me wants to eat brownies. Um, and then, part of me wants to go for a run, part of me wants to sleep in, part of me wants to have the conversation and tell this person off, or a part of me wants to completely buckle and over apologize for existing. And so I kind of go back and forth and give them this idea. And they're like, oh, yeah, yeah, they kind of get that, right? I mean, everyone has some examples of, part of me wants to do this, part of me wants to do that. And I basically just say that. That's what I do. That's my elevator speech, something like that. And so I started thinking, I mean, I think that's good. That's fine. And I think that's really helpful for people. And I think great, an important part of IFS for sure. But then, okay, so this is what I was thinking. I was thinking, what if I started with self, with a focus on self? We all have an authentic self. We're born with it. But things happen in our lives. We pick up burdens, we pick up beliefs about ourselves, about other people in the world, and we need to protect ourselves to survive. So parts come in to help protect us. They help us deal with all the hard things that happen. They help us deal with all the crap. And they're great. They help us survive. But we wouldn't want them to run our lives, and often they do. They get in the driver's seat and they don't get out. But what we want an authentic self to be in the driver's seat. And so IFS is all about getting to know our parts and helping those parts soften so they don't have to work so hard. They don't have to drive because sometimes they don't want to drive. And so we want our authentic self to drive, and they do too, actually. And so when they feel self, then they can relax, they can, get in a different seat, and then self can drive, self can be in charge, and then we can live and move and be more in our authentic self. I think I like that. I like it, actually. I'm going to take a second. I think I like it. I think it needs some work, but I like it. A part of me part of me is already telling me all the things that are wrong with it and telling me that I need to include more things. Like I'm hearing, you're not mentioning unburdening. You're not telling them about going back into childhood scenes and being with those parts and getting those parts out. And I'm thinking, if I was walking from the parking garage to my office one day and I literally had this conversation about like, what do you do? Da, 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 with this guy who was like in real estate or something. And I'm thinking if I told him that, oh, you go into your childhood scenes and you take your childhood parts out of them, he would probably run away. So, yeah, I'm going to tell that part that I get it. I totally get that I'm not saying the whole thing. I'm leaving some things out. But yeah, maybe I don't know. There's sort of a sarcastic, sassy part kind of laughing like, yeah, I'm not sure that we should include that part. I'm actually now feeling really silly. I think I'm feeling really silly because I was hearing some critique and then my silly part comes in to try to help me relax in that critique, but now I've got like silly energy. So I'm going to take a deep breath. Yeah, I noticed my heart was racing a little bit. My voice was getting a little bit probably silly too. I get that though. I get the critique. Like here, I'm going to say my elevator speech to all of you. And then my critical part was telling me all the things that were wrong with it. Oh, you know what? I'm also noticing that critical part was telling me that I shouldn't be saying this at all. Yeah, okay. So I'm also hearing this critical part, which I know, those critics come in because they don't want me to embarrass myself. And so if she comes in and she says, this is terrible and this is stupid and you shouldn't do this at all, just go to your guest because my guest is awesome. And yeah, so she wants me to just not even publish this. And I get that. And I just let her know that I totally get that she's trying to protect me. Critics are often just trying to protect us. And we sometimes miss it because they're pretty tough. And then that silly part comes in to try to help those yucky feelings from the critic. So, yeah. Okay, so that's me kind of mapping the parts. And now I literally kind of moved back and self can come in and just say hi and they can relax a little bit and feel okay. Okay, so that's what I wanted to say. I wanted to tell you about my thoughts about self and having self be the forerunner. Is that how you would say that? Of even my elevator speech. And yeah, I'm going to keep practicing that. I think that's fun. I don't know why I like saying authentic self because I think people get that when you say authentic self versus just self because then you have to explain what that is. But yeah, okay. I'm curious what your elevator speech is. If you have one, you can head over to the Facebook page or drop a comment on Instagram. And yeah, that'd be great. Hope everybody's doing well. My next guest is hilarious and brilliant, and he came up with a super cool thing. I cannot wait for you guys to hear him. I had such fun with him. Yeah, take care.
Thanks for hanging out today. If you liked this episode, make sure you subscribe. And if you really like this episode, share it with a friend and leave a review. You can follow me on Instagram at IFS Tammy and join our community on Facebook at the One Inside Podcast. Talk to you next time.